War between the bulls and the bears today. A global risk-off dragged Sensex and Nifty for the second straight day. Now, Sensex ended a point below the 35,200 level, while the Nifty just about held on to the 10,600 mark. Now, the banking index and the mid-caps outperformed significantly as both the indices closed 0.5% higher. Well, for Wall Street now, it has bounced back after a steep sell-off yesterday, which was on account of weakness in tech stocks. Today, the Dow Jones Index is seeing a triple-digit gains. You can see that on your screens. Nasdaq is up close to 1% after falling to its lowest level in 7 months, and the S&P 500 is more than 1% higher. Well, from equities to crude oil now, prices are staging a marginal recovery after yesterday's drought. The rebound came after reports suggested that U.S. commercial crude inventories last week fell unexpectedly by 1.5 million barrels, a record.
Of gains coming on the space now, and with the U.S. shut because of the Thanksgiving holiday, it is going to be lesser a floor there. You wouldn't perhaps see the crude oil prices decline below that. One, of course, is that the OPEC and allies will try and put some kind of an output policy for 2019. But before that, it is the OPEC members and the allies itself who have been increasing supplies. So when you look at the OPEC output, it's at the highest since 2016. Saudi Arabia has been increasing output as well, and the markets are anticipating that for the month of November it's going to be at 11 million barrels per day before they cut 500,000 barrels for the month of December. So they have been increasing supplies, and on that increase they would cut the output. So the markets really are trying to read into a lot of numbers that we are seeing right now, but there is some bit of a bargain buying that we've seen on the lower side, and markets do anticipate it is going to be quite volatile until that 6th December OPEC meeting is out of the way and there is some kind of a consensus that you've heard from the major oil producers.
All right, thank you for that, Manisha, reporting there on the crude oil prices. Now, earlier today, we spoke to Adrian Mowat, and he says that the combination of falling oil prices and a strengthening rupee means it is time to look towards financials and domestic companies. Listen in.
What is changing as the oil prices come down, the pressure on the rupee is easing. So I think there will be a rotation from the export earning sectors towards domestic sectors. You made a point about the bank indices doing better in India. So I think financials, domestic names will do better in this environment as portfolio managers shift capital from exporters. India specifically, you've got a huge macro tailwind here with the decline in the oil price. When we were having conversations 6 weeks ago, the conversations were very much focused about the high oil price, the weakness in the rupee, and perhaps risks around inflation in India in 2019. The movement that's happened in the oil price, I think, is going to help the rupee and clearly is going to be very positive for Indian inflation next year. So it does make a lot of sense that India is the leading market in Asia, because it's the one that's getting the biggest benefit from the decline in the oil price.
Now, the government is calling for new measures to improve liquidity in the system. Union Minister of State for Civil Aviation, Jayant Sinha, spoke to Shireen Bhan earlier, and he was of the view that the central bank needs to examine the need for unconventional moves to boost liquidity. Now, Sinha believes that the NBFC sector is struggling without liquidity, and that is hurting their ability to lend. He also went on to say that policymakers are worried about the tightness in credit in the economy.
As far as our financial system is concerned, the role of RBI, the role of the public sector banks and other financing institutions, all of those matters have to be thought through right now. The circumstances that we are facing, the high NPAs, the liquidity shock that we've had for the NBFCs, the growth of the shadow financial system, the consolidation of the public sector banks that we're trying to go through, all of these are a particular set of circumstances, and under those circumstances, we really do have to think about, how the role of the RBI itself should evolve. Should the RBI undertake more bold decisions around this? Should they take unconventional steps to strengthen the financial system? And I'd like to remind you, Shireen, that every time there has been a financial crisis in the West, whether it's in the US or in America, in England or in Japan, there has been an evolution. You know, institutions have responded to those challenges, whether it was quantitative easing, whether it was the unprecedented negative interest rates that we had in Japan. You know, central banks are prepared and capable of doing unconventional and bold things as well.
No,
I think we need to examine that in India also.
Okay, but we're not, I mean, are we in the midst of a crisis that requires such unconventional thinking and an unconventional approach? Are we in the midst of that kind of an economic crisis where we would require a QE kind of idea?
Shireen, I again would caution you to not sensationalize the matter. I never said that there is an economic crisis with, you know, the economic growth rates that we are experiencing, the fiscal deficit, you know, the inflation rate. We are actually in a macroeconomic sweet spot. So there's no question of an economic crisis. However, there is a...
Which is why I'm asking that what is the need for unconventional thinking at this point in time?
Yes, yes. So hear me out, please. So what I'm saying is that there is one aspect of the economy, of the financial system, not the economy, the financial system, which is the shadow financial system, which is the NBFCs, where we have gone through a liquidity shock because of what happened with ILFS. Now, in that particular segment of the financial system, do we need to do some unconventional things? Do we need to think about what else RBI can do? Okay. Also, we are dealing with an NPA situation that is unprecedented because of the promiscuous kind of phone banking that was going on in the UPA government. We have to deal with that issue as well. We are dealing with it. Under those circumstances, is the RBI and its role going to evolve? Of course it should. And that is a discussion, that is a collaboration that has to happen between the RBI and the government.
No, I understand, and I won't take too much more time. So, a two-part question. One, to address this liquidity issue that you just spoke of, and this wasn't a matter that was taken up at the board meeting yesterday. We're given to understand it will be taken up on the 14th of December. What is the unconventional idea that the government would like to put on the table to address the liquidity issue? That's point number one. And secondly, you know, on the issue of dealing with the NPAs. Now, the view within the RBI is, for instance, when it comes to the PCA framework, that we're not allowing the banks that are under the PCA framework to lend to anything less than an absolute AAA rated entity, because we don't want these banks to weaken further. But yet we're seeing the government push the Reserve Bank to say, relax the PCA norm so that their lending ability increases. So is that not contradictory?
Shireen, I think we have to take a step back. I can't get into specific policy ideas and specific policy measures. That's really for, you know, the Department of Economic Affairs, the Department for Financial Services and the RBI to deliberate on. But I can tell you a little bit about, you know, what we are dealing with respect to both the PCA situation as well as the NBFC situation. And both of those relate to credit in the economy. Right now, there is a credit tightness in the economy. Borrowing rates are going up and the disbursements are declining, particularly in the NBFCs. So credit is tight in the economy. There's no question about it. You ask anyone and they'll tell you that. So really, we have to start to look at specific measures, whether it is through relaxing a little bit or altering or modifying the PCA, so that banks that have deposits that could potentially be lending, but necessarily have to have the appropriate underwriting standards, the appropriate credit discipline, so that they can take the appropriate action. And that's as far as the PCA situation is concerned. When it comes to the NBFCs, obviously they are facing a liquidity situation where they can't borrow at the rates that they were borrowing earlier or get the kind of liquidity that they were getting earlier on the wholesale financing side. And as they face tightness as far as wholesale financing is concerned, as they, you know, try to be more prudent in their lending, what is happening is that as far as their lending is concerned, as far as their disbursement is concerned, we are seeing very significant tightening there. And that is credit that's not going into the economy, and it's particularly not going into the MSME sector. So if you step back and look at what's happening in the economy as far as credit is concerned, that is something that as policymakers, as all of us who worry about how fast the economy should be growing, how fast investment should be growing, are concerned about. Now, what exact actions have to be taken, that really is for those who are in charge, those who are responsible, to figure out and make the appropriate trade-offs.
Right, so there you have it. The MOS Civil Aviation proposing unconventional moves by the RBI, even as it does a tightrope walk. So what exactly is this current liquidity situation? Well, is a cut in the cash reserve ratio something that should be on the cards as far as the central bank is concerned? Well, Lata Venkatesh caught up with Anant Narayan, a money market expert and professor at the SP Jain Institute of Management. Here's that conversation. Take a look.
Well, you heard rival points of view. The ministers from Delhi and probably NBFCs and HFCs are clamoring for more liquidity. The Reserve Bank has provided system liquidity in the form of open market purchase of bonds, but they have refrained from giving any line of credit to NBFCs because they fear that it is not all a liquidity problem. There is also an asset quality problem. Now, in the midst of all these open market purchases of bonds, the question arises is this the only way to provide liquidity with crude prices falling down to all the way, 25% below the levels just 6 weeks ago? Is there a need to look at the inflation target again and maybe cut interest rates? Or more importantly, or alternatively, even look at a CRR cut? Now, for the last, 10 years, we have forgotten that CRR as an instrument exists. Cash reserve ratio is a percentage of the deposits that banks have to compulsorily keep as cash. At the moment, it stands at 4%, and it is at 4% probably from 2009. Now, is there a need to bring it down to maybe 3.5%? That will release some 50,000 crores into the system. Is that a way to improve liquidity? That's the question we are asking, and we have with us Anant Narayan, a money market expert and a professor of finance at SP Jain Institute. Anand, thank you very much for joining us. Straight away, that question, is CRR an option?
Evening, Lata. Look, it's a tricky one. Obviously, with oil prices coming down and with CPI remaining as soft as it has, the degrees of freedom that policymakers have increased. But I would, probably suggest that we need to exercise some caution out here. Look, what's the intention and what's the objective that we are searching for here? Yes, money has to go to certain sectors which are facing stresses, NBFIs, for instance. Now, there it's not a question of cost of money. Do we really want cost of money to come down, or are we just ensuring that liquidity is available to them at a particular price, at the right price? Now, if the latter is the problem, then it's to ensure that the solution is to ensure that the banking system has adequate capital to be able to lend money to these sectors at the right price. And as you rightly put up, RBI is making money market liquidity available. Now, if you're saying, no, it's not just enough to produce liquidity or provide liquidity, the overall lending has to go up and we need to bring down interest rates as well, then of course you can bring in a CRR cut question as well. But I suspect we're not there as yet. Look, while we are celebrating the fact that oil prices
let me make a
down,
case for it, Anant.
Sure.
It is difficult for the Reserve Bank maybe to cut rates now because they've just moved into calibrated tightening, just last policy. On the other hand, since the last policy, crude prices have fallen by 25%, and that has strengthened the rupee from 74.5 around the time the policy was announced to 71.5 now. So the inflation trajectory probably has to be redrawn by all economists. And since you can't cut rates, what is the objection at all to a CRR cut? One more argument. The Reserve Bank anyway is providing 40,000 crores of liquidity by buying bonds in October and November. Now, if you do too much of buying bonds, you impact the yield curve a little too much. Is not this another way of providing liquidity?
Very valid arguments, Lata, and I'm not saying you're wrong. All I would provide as a counter is, look, just a month back, we were worried about overheating in the economy as far as we were worried about trying to curtail demand so that imports come down, so that the external sector stress that we have of a high current account deficit is controlled. Yes, we are celebrating lower oil prices right now, but can you be sure that this is not ephemeral? December 7th, you have an OPEC meeting. Do you want to go like a yo-yo up and down in the overall context of a very volatile global system? Let's not forget, we're also an emerging market. If there are global trade wars, if there are geopolitical stresses, the luxury that we have of cutting rates and bringing down rates is not as much as a developed market like US does. We have to be concerned about our own separate stresses. All I would say is that, yes, there is room within the policy framework for an easing of the overall policy framework. We obviously don't need to hike rates at this point in time. But do we really want to bring down overall rates at a time when banking loans are still under stress? At a time when we don't know what the true asset quality of NBFIs is? At a time when, capital, if you ask me, the real solution is bringing in adequate capital.
Okay.
We are probably trying to solve a capital problem and therefore a risk appetite problem by injecting liquidity into the system.
Okay.
It's, again, I think it's the wrong solution to the right problem.
Disagreements between the government and the Reserve Bank of India may not be disruptive for the global investors now, but it is on their radar. That is the word coming in from James McCormack, the MD and Global Head Sovereign Ratings at Fitch Ratings. Now, while speaking to CNBC TV 18, McCormack added that more disagreements could be seen globally between governments and central banks come 2019. Here's a slice of that conversation.
When we look at big emerging markets, the potential growth rate here in India is by far the strongest. It will grow stronger or faster than China for the foreseeable future. That's something that we expect to continue. That's fundamentally a pretty positive story. That suggests to us that the macro policy framework is a good one. If we look at the consolidated general government balance, so the fiscal balance, it's improving for the central government, but deteriorating at the level of the states. So a combined balance hasn't really changed either.
All right, but what do you make of the very public tensions between India's central bank and the elected government on a whole host of issues surrounding regulation of banks? Is that a serious risk from the investor's point of view, this standoff, so to speak, between the government and the regulator?
Well, it's certainly going to get investors together. I think we're not really at the stage yet where government debt from where we are today, that would be potentially problematic, given that the debt level is already relatively high. And I think conversely, if we were confident that the debt profile were going to improve going forward, that would give us some confidence in moving the rating higher, because in terms of the external finances for the country as a whole, which have been getting a lot of attention, not something that really gives us cause for concern.
Well, the big story from the aviation space now, the Jet Airways stock rallied over 6% in trade today on the back of a CNBC TV 18 news break that Naresh Goyal and Etihad are in advanced talks to infuse liquidity into the cash-strapped airline. Now, this is an attempt to avert a distress sale to Tata Sons. In fact, Nisha Poddar, who broke that story, is joining us now. Nisha, clearly, Naresh Goyal appears to be in talks with a senior partner. What else are you picking up?
So sources with direct knowledge share with us that Naresh Goyal, the promoter of Jet Airways, is in advanced talks with the large shareholder of Jet Airways, Etihad, to really work out a solution for the immediate financial needs of Jet Airways instead of going ahead with a sale at lower valuations. They also think that what other players like Tata Sons could offer could be a distress sale kind of a scenario which needs to be averted at this point. So the restructuring and the deal that they are working on could immediately infuse about $150 million into the company. What they are discussing at this point is that Etihad, with controlling 50.1% stake in a Jet Privilege, which is a step-down company, could really merge with the company and free up the $150 million cash in that, which can be utilized by the airline. On the other hand, in lieu of this particular stake in Jet Privilege, Etihad could get a higher stake in the parent company, Jet Airways, increasing it from 24% to above 35%. They both, Naresh Goyal as well as Etihad, could be even equal partners after this particular transaction. Then both put together can bring in more cash into the system as well. The experts, analysts have said that of the $1.1 billion of total debt on the books of Jet Airways, immediate requirement of $300 million needs to be met. So these are the talks going on. We do gather Naresh Goyal is in Abu Dhabi to really decide on this particular negotiation. If this happens, any deal on the front of Jet Airways would be called off, but we still have to see how this goes.
Oh, absolutely, Nisha. Thank you very much for bringing us that report. Now, here are some other headlines that we are tracking for you this evening. The first signs of a truce emerge in the battle between the promoters of Yes Bank, where the outgoing MD Rana Kapoor has said that he is in talks with Mother Kapoor and family for a mutual resolution. The stock perked up in trade on the back of that news.
Shares of Dr. Reddy's jumped 6% after a US court ruled in favor of the company to relaunch the generic version of Suboxone, which is used to treat drug addiction.
Shares of Wockhardt surged in trade as well. That stock gained 3% after a US court rejected Johnson & Johnson's request to prevent generic companies from selling drugs. The order will allow Wockhardt to sell Zytiga in the US.
The Confederation of ATM Industry announced that service providers may be forced to shut down about 50% of the ATM machines in India by March next year. The industry body claims that 1 lakh ATMs may be closed unless banks step in to bear the load of the additional cost of compliances. The industry body also claims that they are still reeling under the impact of demonetization. We're on to some national news now, and this is a developing story, the big twist in Jammu and Kashmir politics. Now, earlier today, we told you how the Congress National Conference and the PDP have stitched a grand alliance, and an announcement is imminent soon. Now, the PDP, the National Conference and the Congress have enough numbers to form the next government in the state. Later, PDP chief Mehbooba Mufti claimed that she had faxed a letter to the governor claiming support of 56 legislators belonging to the three parties. But here's the twist. Legislator Sajjad Lone too has put his hat in the ring as far as government formation is concerned. Lone claims to have sent a letter to the governor as well. He claims to have the support of BJP legislators and other legislators. Now, the letter, however, does not specify which parties these other MLAs belong to. Now, the Jammu and Kashmir Governor, SP Malik, has now dissolved the assembly. Omar Abdullah has tweeted on the issue as well. He tweets, and I quote here, the JKNC has been pressing for assembly dissolution for 5 months now. It can't be a coincidence that within minutes of Mehbooba Mufti Sahiba letter staking claim to the order to dissolve the assembly suddenly appears, end quote.
Farmers in Maharashtra are on a march for their long-pending demands yet again. Over 20,000 farmers belonging to different parts of Maharashtra, including Vidarbha and Ahmednagar, began their protest march from Thane today. Now, it will culminate at Azad Maidan in Mumbai tomorrow. Remember, the march has been organized by the Lok Sangharsh Morcha, and farmers say that their protest will continue till their demands of implementing the Swaminathan Committee report, setting up of a judicial system to ensure a minimum support price implementation, complete farm loan waiver, drought compensation and other demands are not met. Staying with the agrarian space, the agrarian distress in Madhya Pradesh is a crucial issue in the lead-up to the elections, and Mandsaur has been the epicenter of farmer protests, where police firing last year left 6 people dead and several others wounded. Now, after travelling extensively around the area, the discontent among farmers is clearly visible. But will it turn into votes against the incumbent government? Archana Shukla finds out in this ground report.
Mandsaur is an example of how important farmer votes are to both the BJP and Congress.
मंदसौर शांति का टापू है। जो घटना यहाँ पर घटी है वो उसकी जो परिस्थितियां निर्मित हुई थी उसका लाभ लेने के लिए कांग्रेस ने आग में घी डालने का उपयोग किया।
पर वो आपकी मौजूदा सरकार में वो हुआ था।
ठीक है, सरकार में हुआ था ना, सरकार ने थोड़ी किया क्या, कांग्रेस के लोगों ने उकसाने का काम किया। भीड़ थी, भीड़ पर गोली चली है। पहली बार हिंदुस्तान में माननीय शिवराज जी ने इतिहास रचा है। 1-1 करोड़ रुपए की राशि और 1-1 नौकरी किसान के पुत्र को दी है। मेरा कॉन्फिडेंस तो किसानों का आंदोलन था, वहां से शुरू हुआ। वो कांग्रेस का प्रवर्तित आंदोलन नहीं था। किसान खड़ा हुआ और किसान ने जब अपनी बात कहने की कोशिश की तो उसको बोलने का मौका भी नहीं मिला। नोटबंदी और जीएसटी ने किसान और व्यापारी दोनों की कमर तोड़ दी है। वो हमें एक विश्वास दिलाता है कि जनता इस बार बदलाव चाहती है और हमारा रोल है कि हमारी भूमिका एक विपक्ष की है, हम निभा रहे हैं, हम बदलाव लाएंगे।
सरकार की उसी ना 3 रुपए किलो बेच दे क्या? A tour around the mandi reflects the farmers' mood, one that is aggressive. But are they angry?
तो मैडम लालच है कि अपना कितना दाम मिल रहा है?
आधे पैसे ही मिल रहे थे।
आधे? पहले कितने मिल रहे थे?
पहले मैडम ये 2000 बिकी थी, आज 1500 बिकी।
अच्छा, और भावांतर तो अभी नहीं चल रही है?
अभी नहीं चल रही है।
कितनी जमीन है आपकी? कितनी जमीन पे?
मेरे पास में 4 हेक्टेयर जमीन बिल्कुल मिला इस साल में। भावांतर का भी मिला, वो राहत राशि भी मिली और जो फसल बीमा योजना जो बीमा था वो भी मिला हमको।
दाम तो हर साल पहले
बढ़ता था दाम, जो
लेट बेसिस पे बढ़ता था, कम हो रहा है,
अब रिवर्स आ रहा है भाव।
स्कीम वगैरह सरकार चला रही है, वो आपके हित में है या आपको कुछ और चाहिए?
वो हित में है, परंतु जैसे कि अगर इसका निर्यात करते हैं सरकार, तो इससे कुछ भाव और 1000-2000 रुपये और भाव इसका मिलता है, तो
निर्यात करेगी सरकार तो?
हाँ,
जैसे 15 रुपये कम से कम 3000-4000 बिकनी चाहिए लहसुन।
लगभग 4000 बिकेगी, जब जाके किसान को लगेगा कि गेहूं के बराबर पैसे मिले हैं।
आप लोग यहाँ पर खेती करते हैं तो उसमें लोन वगैरह भी लेते हैं, कर्ज वर्ज लेते हैं आप लोग, कि बिना कर्ज के?
बिना कर्ज।
ये जो होती है ना प्राथमिक साख समिति, इससे लेते हैं,
सोसाइटी से कर्जा लेते हैं।
हाँ।
तो वो कर्जा आप लोग समय पे लौटा पा रहे हैं? उतना कमाई हो रही है आपकी?
उतनी नहीं हो पा रही है। अगर ये सरकार ये माफ कर दे तो हो सकता है।
4 क्विंटल मिला। 12 क्विंटल दाम सही है?
मिला, मजदूरी का पैसा मिला।
सरकार की स्कीम आप तक पहुंचती है?
स्कीम में कौन पहुंचावे, हमको क्या मालूम, खेती करते हम तो गाँव में, सिटी में रही नहीं, वहाँ कौन आते, गाँव में कौन आते।
52 का मिलता है, बाकी क्या है कि समर्थन मूल्य हमारा जो है ना उससे और कम में मिल रहा है हमको। 52 का कुछ फायदा नहीं हो रहा है हमको समर्थन मूल्य मिल जाए तो कोई दिक्कत नहीं, हमको 52 चाहिए नहीं हमको।
कर्जा ले ले, खाली अपने समय पे आ जाता, वोट दे दो, अपनी चीज कमा लो, 5 साल में अपना मौज कर लो। कल आप जामू अमेरिका, बेल्जियम, फ्रांस का खा लो, इंडिया का नाम बता दो कि हम वहाँ से चने लाए, हम लहसुन लाए, हम प्याज लाए। अरे पैदा तो यहाँ हो रही, कमाई यहाँ हो रही, इनकम यहाँ हो रही, लेना देना किसान कर रहे हैं।
लगता है कि जो आयात करते हैं वो आयात नहीं करना?
कुछ नहीं, आयात कहाँ से हो रही, हो ही नहीं आयात।
What most farmers who we spoke to feel, they are not getting the right price for their produce. While there are some positives that the Shivraj Singh Chauhan government has done in the last couple of years, whether it is to do with electricity for farming or 0% interest loans at 0% interest rate, but as far as pricing for the crops is concerned, that has still not been taken care of, despite bigger schemes like that of Bhavantar, and that will be a big question on the minds of farmer voters who will go to vote this time.
Well, just as Archana was reporting, farmer distress could be a major issue going forward as far as the upcoming state assembly elections are concerned. And speaking of these upcoming assembly elections, Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh are in election mode, and the Bharatiya Janata Party is playing defense on all of these three turfs. Now, Union Minister for Human Resource Development, Prakash Javadekar, while speaking to my colleague Parikshit Luthra, weighed in on this anti-incumbency issue and explained why he's hopeful that his party will emerge victorious against these odds. Take a look.
The alteration will stop this year because there is no rule that every time there will be once Congress, once BJP. We have all anti-incumbency issues, and we have maintained our states like Gujarat, Goa, and we have won many other states. In 14 we had 6 states, now we have 19, and Congress had 16. They have lost it, now they have only 4. So Congress is losing, BJP is winning. That's the rule what we see all over India. And so we will maintain all our 3 states, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh and Rajasthan.
Okay, so Mr. Javadekar striking a confident note, but the fact is in every rally around the country, Rahul Gandhi is speaking about farmers' distress. Over here also, Congress says there have been over 100 farmer suicides. Do you think there is now a perception that the BJP is an anti-farmer party, Congress, and somehow that needs to be addressed?
Congress is the suicide of farmers all over the country is the result of anti-farmer policies pursued by Congress for over 50 years. Because Congress never gave them comprehensive insurance, Congress never offered them real prices, that was their demand for 40 years. Then they never gave them water and the due credit and many other things. We have given them fertilizer, Fasal Bima Yojana, and more importantly, remunerative prices, 150% or 50% more than the cost of production. It was landmark decision of Modi government, and now farmers are so happy because they are now assured of minimum support price, which is 150% of their cost of production.
Right. You know, Sachin Pilot has questioned the BJP and Vasundhara Raje on employment figures, saying that the youth are unemployed. Millions of youth across the state of Rajasthan are unemployed. The economy is suffering. Farmers are suffering. Crimes against women is on the rise. All of this has not been addressed.
That is really, again, a legacy from Congress days and Congress misrule, because they drove economy to such a level in a socialistic pattern that we never grew to the potential. Now we are on ease of doing business. We are 77th in the rank. And now that brings in investment. That brings in more industries. That in Congress regime, there were only 2 mobile factories. Now we have 124. So this is how employment grows in each sector. Now the IT sector has shown a robust growth in employment. Not only IT, but all the infrastructure development. If Congress was doing 7 kilometers per day of national highways, and we are doing 28 kilometers per day, that increases the employment.
The HRD minister there on why he's hopeful that BJP will emerge victorious in all the 3 states going to polls.
Let's go back to the top political story. Now, the governor of Jammu and Kashmir has dissolved the state assembly. This after both Mehbooba Mufti and Sajjad Loan have staked claim to form the next government. Now, Mehbooba claims to have the outside support of Congress and the National Conference, but Sajjad Loan claims to have the support of the BJP MLAs and some PDP MLAs willing to break ranks. But how is the state now staring at fresh elections after the assembly is dissolved by the governor? Well, Mufti Isla is reporting from Srinagar to get us more on this dramatic situation in the state of Jammu and Kashmir.
Crazy and fast-paced developments here in Srinagar politically. We're saying early in the morning, the National Conference, Congress, as well as PDP decided that they're going to form government. And after hectic parleys through the day, they even chose chief ministerial candidate in Altaf Bukhari, the senior-most leader in PDP. What happened later, the PDP said that it's going to stake claim, and actually Mehbooba Mufti wrote a letter to Governor Satyapal Malik. She did also try to send it through fax, but she claimed that the fax was not working. Immediately, minutes after, Sajjad Loan, who leads the third front here along with PDP rebels and has support of BJP, he also staked claim. Now, this was a kind of a mess up of democracy here, in the sense that both these parties, both these blocks rather, tried to stake claim for government formation. Ultimately, what happened was that Governor Satyapal Malik dissolved the assembly. Now it remains to be seen what recourse PDP, Congress and National Conference are going to take, whether they will go to the court or not. As of now, what we know is that National Conference and Congress will be extremely happy with what they have got at the end of the day, because dissolution of assembly is what they wanted. But PDP will also be happy in the sense that its members were getting poached by BJP and the rebel faction of PDP, which is headed by Imran Ansari and People's Conference Sajjad Loan. Clearly, there's a lot of political muddle which has taken place here in the valley, but all eyes will now be on PDP, whether it moves the court and seeks some kind of an order which will revive the assembly. In that case, next would be that if the assembly is revived, then perhaps PDP, National Conference and Congress are going to physically verify that they have the numbers. The magical number is 44 in Jammu and Kashmir Assembly, but it seems that PDP, National Conference and Congress had the numbers. However, the other side stalled democracy, given that they put in a letter which prompted the governor to dissolve the assembly. In Srinagar, this is Mufti Isla.
Well, so high drama there as Mufti was reporting from the state of J&K. Will the governor invite one of these two sides? Will one of these two sides move the courts, and will we see a trust vote? A number of big questions to which we can expect answers in the days, if not hours to come. Let's shift focus now. The Income Tax Department has served notices to Flipkart founders Sachin and Binny Bansal, asking them to explain their capital gains after the deal with Walmart. Now, sources say it's not just the Bansals. 35 other investors of Flipkart have also been served notices by the tax department. Timsy Jaipuria is joining us with more details. Timsy.
Well, what we are given to understand from our sources is the fact that Sachin and Binny Bansal have been served income tax notice on account of Walmart Flipkart deal. Remember, Walmart had bought 77% stake in Flipkart in May for about $16 billion. And apart from Sachin and Binny Bansal, other 35 investors too have been asked to explain their capital gains from the proceeds that they have made by the sale of their stake. Income tax notices were sent to all these investors on October 18th, and some investors have already started replying. When you see what the notice says, let me come down to what the notice has asked these people. Notice has clearly asked what are the proceeds that they earned from Walmart Flipkart deal, how much is the capital gains that they assess from these proceeds, and how will they pay. As far as now, what sources have told that other investors have started replying, but both Sachin and Binny Bansal have not replied as yet. So let's see how much does Income Tax Department garner from this particular deal. And yes, how soon Sachin and Binny Bansal give a reply. We'll keep you posted.
Well, tax troubles come calling for the Bansals of Flipkart. Timsy, thank you very much for reporting on that story. But now, after battling one scandal after another this year, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg is standing his ground. In an interview to CNN, he said he will not step down as CEO. Now remember, Zuckerberg has voting control over the board, which means he cannot be ousted. Now recently, the New York Times had reported that Facebook's attempts to deflect the controversies ranging from Cambridge Analytica scandal to how Russia attempted to use the website to influence the 2016 US presidential elections have been the talk. And here's what Zuckerberg had to say when asked by CNN if he would be stepping down.
So you are not stepping down as chairman?
That's not the plan.
That's not the plan. Would anything change that?
I mean, like eventually over time. I mean, I'm not gonna be doing this forever, but I certainly I'm not currently thinking that makes sense. Cheryl is a really important part of this company and is leading a lot of the efforts to address a lot of the biggest efforts that the biggest issues that we have. And she's been an important partner for me for 10 years. And you know, I'm really proud of the work that we've done together, and I hope that we work together for decades more to come.
From Facebook to Facebook-owned WhatsApp, which now has a new India head. Now, this company's messaging service today appointed EasyTap's Abhijit Bose as the new India head of WhatsApp. His stint is due to begin early next year, but do remember, his appointment comes at a time when WhatsApp has been under tremendous pressure to put in place a mechanism to curb fake messages on its platform. Now, after several multinational companies expressed their reservations against data localization, the European Union has come out and called it a burden for businesses and free flow of data. Speaking exclusively to CNBC TV 18's Rituparna Bhuyan, EU ambassador to India added that EU does not follow data localization. Listen in to that conversation.
In our internal EU regulations, we don't follow this principle of data localization, as we think that it could be a burden for developing business-to-business contacts. That's why our position or our advice to the Indian government is to look at this, and this is our advice on the basis of our experience.
Perhaps it may not be the way data localization norms are being proposed, may not be conducive for business-to-business relations between Indian and European companies. Is that
data localization always is a burden and is a barrier for free flow of business data between different entities.
Right.
Artificial intelligence has been the buzzword in the world of IT for a while now. And how will it really affect our lives? Where does privacy fit into this entire discussion? And more immediately, what is the status of the proposed data protection law? Well, these were some of the questions raised by CNBC TV 18 Shireen Bhan to Anant Maheshwari, President of Microsoft India, Sangeeta Reddy of Apollo Hospitals, as well as the IT Secretary Ajay Prakash Soni. Here's a slice of that conversation. Take a look.
Mr. Sani, let me start by asking you, the finance minister, when he presented the budget, had articulated this vision as far as artificial intelligence is concerned. The Niti Aayog was then tasked to put together the framework for what India's blueprint or strategy should be as far as artificial intelligence is concerned. For the benefit of everyone here in the room and for the audience that's watching at home, give me a sense of where things currently stand. How has the government been able to use AI, tools for AI, to actually enrich, empower, and enable citizens today?
I think the national strategy for AI has been articulated by Niti Aayog, and it starts with a sentence that AI is poised to disrupt our world. So I think our strategy really has to be getting India poised to use AI, and AI for everyone, AI for good.
Sangeeta, since a lot of the conversation has been about AI for good, and one of the aspects that's being talked about is what it can do for healthcare, make it not just affordable, but also much more accessible, especially in a country like India. Give me a sense of how you've been able to adopt AI to ensure that that objective is met, and what are the challenges that you foresee for the future? For instance, are we talking about a situation where your GP is no longer going to be relevant, but it's going to be, the AI bot or the AI doctor that's going to do the GP's work, and it's only going to be for specialized prognosis, specialized diagnosis, that you will actually need to consult with a physical, real doctor?
So I think the entire realm of this is evolving so interestingly. So first, when I saw Mr. Sahani here, and I said, "What am I doing in the middle of Microsoft and the government?" I just kind of realized
you're a use
minute,
case.
Yes, I'm a use case, and that's exactly it. And healthcare is such a high potential use case. Of the 44 gigabytes you spoke about, it's estimated that 4 out of those 44 are going to be in healthcare. And incidentally, it's 10 to the power of 21, the gigabyte. Your team sent me that.
That's why we need women on the panel. They count the zeros better than the men can. All right, go ahead.
But just going across, I want to take one step back and really look at the healthcare spectrum. We need access. All of you know healthcare is denied to so many. We need quality. It's a matter of life, every single decision, every single input. And we need the cost to come down. But what artificial intelligence in healthcare is, to me, assisted intelligence. So the GP will get smarter, the GP will be able to do more, the health worker or the health team will be far more proactive, so your waiting time in a GP's office is going to come down to nothing, and maybe you'll see your GP when you're at home. And your GP will primarily spend time if you have a psychiatry problem, which I think is going to take a while for the machines to replace.
Well, but Anand, I want to pick up on the point that Sangeeta mentioned there, updatability. And that's a big difference, when we talk about the fact that at scale, you're going to be able to update skills, you're going to be able to connect. So connectivity plus updatability. So you're not just taking on one individual. It's going to be an individual versus the power of a network. And that's the new world that we're going to be up against.
So a couple of things. I think I just got a thought sparked when Sangeeta was speaking. And you asked about, will it replace the GP? It's known in India, if you are able to get a doctor to be in front of you, you typically get 2 minutes in India for the doctor to read all sorts of reports. You put in front of them in terms of tests, all sorts of diagnosis for symptoms. And then you also, in that 2 minutes, want to feel good that you actually got the real sort of solution to all the ailments that you have. I think Satya really emphasized that in his book. With AI, we can spend a lot more time on empathy, which is the real human aspect of enhancement that we can do. Because now that person, the doctor, whether it's a GP or it's a surgeon, is not spending time to assure you that that person's looked at all the 2,000 variables that might be needed to give the diagnosis to you. Because that is there in front of both you and the doctor. You can really focus on how do you feel about going through either a surgery or even taking a medicine.
The argument, and I've had this with government in the past, especially around the time of the Aadhaar debate, etc., was, well, Google knows everything anyway, so what's the big deal about privacy? I mean, that cannot be the argument. We're still waiting for the bill to be passed, whether it'll be taken up in this session of Parliament or the next, we don't know. There's the new set of regulations with data localization, and if you speak with industry, it's fairly divided on this issue. The American and the European corporations will tell you that data localization is India's way of insulating itself from the global economy, but you talk to Indian enterprises and they say, well, it's our data, we should have the ability to be able to leverage it. Why should Google and Facebook make money off of it? So what is the way forward on both these aspects?
I think privacy, as the Supreme Court has held, is now emanating from fundamental rights. So data privacy is like a fundamental right for a citizen in India. For that to be put into action, data privacy framework has to come in so that the entities that handle your data handle that in a very responsible manner, and recourse is available under the Indian law in case privacy is infringed. I think the draft data protection legislation has been in public domain now for quite some time, and we have received a large number of responses around that. One good news is that we are getting ready, and we are close to sort of completing that process, and we'll take it further. It should come in earlier rather than later.
When you say earlier, sir, give me some indication of the timeline. The Parliament session is going to start on the 11th of December. Do you mean that early, or do you mean that the budget session is when we're likely to see it taken up?
I think we are trying to bring it forward very quickly, hopefully in the
winter session,
in the earliest session.
Right now, India's largest online pharmacy, MedLife, plans to go public. Funded by Alchem Laboratories Family Trust presently, the Bengaluru-based healthcare platform intends to file for an IPO in the next 2 years to fund its ambitious growth strategy. In a chat with cnbc TV 18's Farah Bukwala, MedLife's founder Tushar Kumar says the company is focusing on growing its diagnostics business, which presently accounts for 8% of its revenues. Take a look.
Now we have come to a stage where anyways operationally we have started to make money, and we will be profitable on an EBITDA level by the next financial year. So whatever capital is needed is for growth capital, so we will keep funding it ourselves, and we may plan for an IPO in the next 2 to 3 years. We are looking at investing close to 50 to 60 crores in this particular vertical, mainly in setting up of the labs and the operation piece, as well as the marketing for it. And we expect that the main growth and the main revenues will come from the new cities where we'll be launching. So within this quarter, we expect to have 10 labs, along with a very big central lab in Bangalore, which would be almost 10,000 to 15,000 square feet. The design of which is already underway. Other than this, next financial year, we expect to be there in all the cities where we are. So 50 labs will be operational.
So apart from the diagnostics business, the other big focus area for the company is its private label business, which currently comprises of Ayurvedic health supplements. This business currently contributes about 5% of its overall revenues, and the idea is to take this to about 10% in the coming years. So the company is looking at including a whole host of products to this portfolio, including diabetics footwear and food products, as well as glucose meters and also non-Ayurvedic health supplements.
Omnichannel, of course, we expect that half of it would be from the franchisee model and half of it would be our own stores. We expect around 150 stores next year to be there. The main idea behind Omnichannel is we can leverage it as a spoke for our last mile deliveries, as also use it as a marketing tool because customers can then see the store in their neighborhood. They can recall the branding, they can recall the brand, and it helps us make a better top of the mind recall for the brand.